Audio Jungle.
Hey everybody, welcome to the morning market briefing. It's Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Hope you're doing well. Quick snapshot of the markets. Futures down for the most part. Dow futures down 57, S&P down 66, NASDAQ down 84 basis points, oil down just a touch, gold's up, silver's up. Nobody cares about crypto. So
big day for soybeans though.
Big day for soybeans. The soybeans are back. Soy boys paying through the nose for this stuff. Jumping in right away, Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan. I mean, did you think she was not going to go to Taiwan?
I didn't think she was going to go.
I felt like she was going to Taiwan the whole time. It just seems like this is a real crusade for her. Like she's showing her bravery.
This is a classic "don't be a martyr" situation.
Yeah. So first Speaker of the House to go to Taiwan in 25 years, first since Newt Gingrich. Gingrich, however, went to Beijing first before going to Taiwan. White House trying to defuse this situation. I don't know, Ben, what's the angle here?
Yeah, so they repeatedly trying to make clear that Nancy Pelosi does not represent the executive branch of the United States.
Right.
They're saying that there is no reason to use a potential visit to justify or to spark some sort of crisis or conflict, said John Kirby, the White House's National Security Council guy. Biden told Xi in his conversation last week that the U.S. policy on Taiwan hasn't changed and that Congress is independent from the executive branch. But, you know, China's saying allowing Pelosi to visit without consequences would only invite more senior political officials to actually go to China, and therefore it needs to be stopped. And so they have said in a quote that probably everyone's heard of is that those who play with fire will perish by it. So, I think they actually said the official quote was those who play with fire will get burned, but perish is certainly stronger. She's previously taken some risky trips, though, one to Tiananmen Square in 91 and then one to Kiev back in May. So she's no stranger to pushing a little bit and trying to play in that gray area. And I think she's trying to do that now.
She's brave. She's just so brave.
Yeah, super brave. I mean, if she ends up being Archduke Franz Ferdinand and starting World War III, I mean, good for her, but she's not going to be able to bask in that glory for all that long. So I guess we'll see how today goes. Do we know what time she's supposed to publicly appear? Because this is a dumb question, but is it tomorrow there already? I think it's like 14 hours. So it's probably
getting close.
It's
getting
close to tomorrow. It'll be around kind of noon.
Alternate headline: Nancy Pelosi travels to the future.
Yeah. I would say, as far as markets are concerned, I would say that the market's probably pricing in some of this today, and to the extent that she goes to Taiwan and leaves, the market probably would rally on that.
Yeah. We did get ISM manufacturing yesterday. The headline number down just a bit, 52.8 down from 53. Then it seemed like prices were kind of the big story, at least in our initial read of this. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I do think that prices were positive. I thought that this was one of the better ISM manufacturing reports that we've seen for some time. I was surprised the market actually didn't rally more on that news. There was some commentary that was definitely referring to a slowdown in business, and I do think that that's taking place, but we also already know that. It makes me a little bit more optimistic on prices. It's probably a little bit more accentuated in the manufacturing side of the economy because of freight and energy costs, which fell in June. And the bigger issue right now is on the consumer side. So we'll get the ISM services number, which will be more consumer facing. That'll come out tomorrow. That'll be based on some retail trade numbers as well. So that'll probably be more impactful at this point in the cycle than the manufacturing side, because the manufacturing side is still working through a backlog and kind of just going. New orders weren't great. Employment wasn't great, but definitely better than I was fearing.
Yeah, the slowdown definitely you see it all over some of the commentary. One company saying inflation is slowing down business, another saying growing inflation is pushing a stronger narrative around pending recession concerns. Many customers appear to be pulling back on orders. Another company still saying our markets are still holding up. However, I believe a slowdown is coming. We're cautious about going out too far with orders. So certainly seems like we are on the precipice of this as we look at just the way companies are communicating in terms of what their strategy is looking at.
At the end of the day, a lot of this is attitudinal. And I think that beginning in May and then certainly into June, there was a big psychology shift, especially in tech world, especially in retail and among consumers, as well as gas prices were high. And people said, man, we really need to pull back on stuff. They just bought their tickets for their summer vacations. They didn't have any money and they pulled back. And now they feel a little bit like they've taken a breath, and July was a little bit better. But I don't think that ultimately changes the trend, the inexorable trend of what we're seeing, which will mean that you'll have these attitudinal shifts within the broader trend of down. And I think July was a little bit of a positive attitudinal shift.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We do get the JOLTS job opening data today at 10 a.m. We'll give you those numbers tomorrow. The June estimate is for 11 million, down from 11.3 million openings in May. I feel like in the overall scheme of the employment picture, this is almost more circumstantial data, especially given some of the lag that we have in the reporting. But Ben, how do you kind of think that's going to shake out?
I think it's going to be relatively positive. I think there's going to be fewer tech and retail jobs, especially if you looked at LinkedIn data. It looks like the hiring definitely fell down in the month of June. Whether or not we see that in the job openings data, though, is difficult to tell. I think we're going to see more of an accurate picture on the Friday report when we actually get unemployment, which will also incorporate not only job openings, not only hiring, but also the net impact of layoffs and people just saying, yeah, the job posting is still out there, but we're not really actively pursuing it.
Yeah, it's a tough read through because the job openings could go down, but that doesn't mean they got filled. It might be just they got dropped.
Which I think the Federal Reserve might actually want.
Yeah,
because they want fewer job openings. So I think the worst report for the market right now would be perversely like a 12 million number on the job openings or 11.5 million number on the job openings, because that would just mean the Federal Reserve continues to keep its foot firmly planted on the brake. If we get something in the 10 million range, especially in the low 10 million, I think that that's probably positive for the market, but really it's just a punt until the Friday report.
Yeah.
On the earnings side, we've got Caterpillar that reported down about 3.7%. Uber up 12%. So kind of a, I don't know, if the bar's set low enough, you too can succeed type story there. Ben, what stood out from those companies?
Pricing. Caterpillar also saw a little bit of a decline in China, which shouldn't really have been a surprise given the lockdowns, but I think that demand there is not coming back as quickly as people thought. Definitely thinking that I think there was too much inventory, frankly, built up for Caterpillar. And even in their guidance, they're talking about higher sell through. Notably, they're not talking about sell in the Q3 and the Q4 quarter. So my guess is that there was a lot of inventory built up, probably a bit too much, especially in pockets, especially in China. And as a result, I think that that's probably what's driving Caterpillar lower. In terms of what they're actually doing, they're raising prices pretty aggressively in construction. The average price went from 7.7% up to 9.5% in Q2. Resources went from 7.8 to 12.5, and energy and transportation went from 2.6 to 5.2. And they expect higher prices in the second half of the year, as they expect those higher prices to more than offset the manufacturing cost increase. So inflation definitely a theme for Caterpillar, with a China offset on volume. And then Uber, they're just taking more and more money. So whenever you book an Uber, the Uber Eats or Uber Drive, they're now taking 26.6% for when you're a passenger, and 19.4% when you do Uber Eats. And that's up significantly from 18.7 and 15.2 on a year-over-year basis. So they're taking about 30%, 20 to 30% more than what they were taking this time last year. So drivers not necessarily getting paid all that much more, but a lot more money is flowing to Uber, which is what they wanted to do. The CEO said in May in a letter to employees that they really need to accelerate profitability. So what they're doing is they're keeping more for themselves, they're paying their drivers less, and they're cutting costs on a corporate level, which is good for Uber stock, I guess. It's up 12%, you said, this morning, but it's not so good for their drivers, and it's not so good for their passengers. But time will tell if it's good for the brand.
I don't Uber much, but it's so expensive.
So expensive.
We looked at an Uber on Saturday night just from the Battery to our house. It's like 8 miles. Call me old school, but I just took a taxi cab.
Yeah, I mean,
people were shocked and appalled when I was just like, we're just going to go home in a taxi.
And what's the difference?
And we saved like $35.
It's crazy what they're charging. I think one of the reasons is we've kind of left, I don't know, is it taking the blue pills in terms of the Uber now? We're not basing it on any law of supply and demand anymore. It's just based on need, and they're pricing based on, they're taking out a huge set of the consumer base and just saying, look, these consumers are completely price insensitive, and we're going to price as high as we can. We're going to forego all those consumers that don't really add value. We're just going to go for the cream of the crop and service those guys, because those are the ones who will actually make us profitable.
And it was really easy when they were a private company to just lose money hand over fist, undercut taxis. And then, once you become public, you got to make money. VCs don't care. They'll keep pumping money into you. But once you go public, they want a return on investment. And I think that's what we've seen over the last couple of years, really.
Yeah, it's just a bizarre model where I think you're exactly right, Ben. I don't think the economics are. I mean, I remember surge pricing used to be such a big deal. Like, it'd be like, hey, let's leave a game early to avoid surge pricing. Now it's like the pricing almost doesn't matter. Like, it's always more expensive than you think it should be, no matter where you are, where you're coming from, where you're going. It's just kind of insane.
And you talk to the drivers and they're not making a ton of money.
No.
It's just Uber. And if you think about it economically, you have a middleman now. With a taxi, you didn't have a middleman.
Yep. Yeah, and the taxi, right when I got in, it goes, good choice, folks. Uber and Lyft leave a lot of folks stranded, man. He must have said that 12 times.
It's true.
He gave us a business card, one of which was completely blank. Gave us 2 business cards. One was blank on both sides.
One was just a card.
You write your own story.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up there. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8:30. Talk to you guys soon.
Welcome to Titan HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd DeVoe, where planning meets reality.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this fine world. And first, I have to say thank you for Dan Scott for filling in for me last week. As you can tell, the week before I was sick. COVID got me, and so COVID still is a real thing. There's some still problems out there with it. So please, take precautions and not get this, because I'm telling you, man, I've been down for about a month with this thing. So it's been crazy. My name is Todd DeVoe. I'm the host of Business Continuity Today. And I'm also, still got the cough. I'm also the Director of Emergency Management at Titan HST. And I teach at the post-secondary level. And I love learning new things and sharing with you what I've learned. And today, we're going to talk about complex problem solving. And is it possibly, what are complex problems and how do we solve them? So let's talk about problems. So I'd like this quote. I'm going to read this directly from you. And it's from Albert Einstein. And he said, if I were given an hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining what the problem is, and then 1 minute resolving it. So if you think about that for a little bit, sometimes we go into a situation where we know that there are issues or problems, but we really don't define that problem well enough before we start trying to solve it. And I'm guilty of this as well, right? And my daughter comes to me with a problem or whatever it is. I start trying to solve it, and she's like, no. Listen, Dad, this is my problem. She's 9, so her problems are not very complex necessarily, but the same principle applies. So what is the problem definition process? So you need to establish what is that basic need? What are you trying to fix, right? Now, when it comes to business continuity or emergency management, sometimes the problem that we're trying to fix is a simple of how do we keep business running during a crisis such as COVID, right? Or during the supply chain issues like we've talked about in the past, right? But however, is necessarily the supply chain the problem that we're trying to solve? I talk to my students a lot about climate change, right? And yes, could we argue is climate change made by humans or is it cyclical or whatever, right? There's all those political arguments that go along with it. And I tell them all the time, I said, that is not our problem to solve as emergency management, as business continuity issues. That is not our problem to solve. Our problem to solve when it comes to the change in climate, which I do empirically is happening. What do we have to take a look at? And in the case of emergency management, we're looking at the intensity of storms, the raising sea level, like in Miami, for instance, where they're dealing with flooding, or in Norfolk, Virginia, where they're dealing with more tidal surges. Excuse me. Those are the problems that we're looking to solve for. We're not looking to solve the complex problem of climate change necessarily of what we do. We're looking at solving the problems that are affecting or the effects from those that are affecting our daily business and our daily operations. And this is what we have to really take a look at, is like defining what that problem is and how do we fix it. Because if you're taking a look at this large, complex, hairball problem, right, it can be overwhelming and we're not going to necessarily find the answers, right? But if you could bring that problem down into the areas that are impacting you and solving for that problem at that time, right, it becomes much more manageable, right? And one of the things I spoke about before is the idea of simplifying that complex problem, right? And that is, again, defining what that problem is, right? Simplifying the complexity of it and to be able to find the answers. Because the first and quickest answer isn't always the best answer, right? And even though we could go incremental changes and having some sort of direction that we're going, is that the right thing to do? Going back to Einstein's Einstein's statement, right, is saying taking the 59 minutes of that 1 hour to define what the problem is and taking that 1 minute to resolving it. I think that's critical if we take a look at it in that concept, right? And then if we could take the time, slow it down, right? Now there's some fast moving disasters, right? We're not talking about, if there's a fire happening that you have to evacuate. That's not what we're discussing here. We're discussing, let's go back to climate change as the issue, right? Break that down into from the complexity that it is and break it down into and make it simplified and then solve for those simple problems, right? So step one is establishing that need for a solution. Do you need to find a solution? So now when it comes to business continuity, right? Do you need to have a solution? Is it as simple as saying, hey, it doesn't really impact us, we go on as business as usual, or is it something that does impact you, where say, for instance, like, is it what's the cost of air conditioning, if you will, to keep areas cool? Now I say this in not saying that just turn an air conditioner on is a solution, but in cases where you have extreme heat, like we had over in England just recently, or Europe for that matter, there was the solution of turning the air conditioner on. For many people wasn't a solution because they don't have it, right? So that's why I bring that up. So what is that basic need? right? Then the second portion of it is, what is the desired outcome? What are you trying to look at the end? Have If you know what your desired outcome is, it's easier to build that roadmap to it, and that's part of the decision making process, and really simplifying that question. The other part of it is, who stands to benefit and why? Because there's always going to be beneficiaries such as customers, right? If now we go back to the air conditioning, if you have a mall, for instance, if you're running the mall and you're able to air condition the mall, customers are going to benefit from that, right? So that means that people will go back to England if they could leave their home, which is stifling hot, and go someplace where it's nice and cool and participate in your business over there, right? The customers are going to benefit from that, which in turns benefits you, right? Justify the need. Is there an expense associated with that? Absolutely, right? There's going to be an expense associated with turning that air conditioner on, turning it up higher, right? However, is it aligned with your strategy, right? So that's the other side of it. So justify those needs. Is the effort aligned with your strategy? And are those desired benefits for the company? And how do you measure them? So you should have everything that you do needs to be measurable. As my friend Brian says all the time, any decision that you make should have a measurable aspect to it, specifically when it's coming into what we're doing here, right? And then how will you ensure that solution is implemented? That's the other side of it too, is making that solution, making it bite-sized, and how is it implemented? As Craig Fugate says, the lesson learned, right, if not implemented, is just a lesson observed, right? So how do you go from observing to implementation, right? And then the third part of it is conceptualize the problem, okay? So, or contextualize the problem, I should say, right? As this estimating that past efforts, like what solutions have been used before, right? Can you use those solutions again? Are you reinventing the wheel? What approaches have you tried and would have worked? What have other people have tried to on the same issue? What has worked? What has failed? And those are those lessons learned that we talked about. And then the fourth part about it is write it down, right? Write that problem statement down. What exactly is your problem? What's your solution? What is your outcome? Write these down on a piece of paper, on a board, and work through it through your team. Again, if it's a team of one, you got to work through it on yourself on that one. And then what are the requirements that you need to do to meet that solution, right? And then which problem solvers should we engage? Who do you bring into that conversation, right? That's part of your problem solving process. And then the other part of it is who are the winners and losers. And what I mean by that is not necessarily individuals or companies, but your solutions, your answers to, right? So you take a look at them. What problem solving solutions are the winners? Which ones are losers? Put them into categories, and then it helps you make a decision on which way you're going. This doesn't have to be a 6-day process, right? You could do this fairly quickly once you get it down into a system. So create that system of decision making and problem solving, and use that and practice that on simple problems too, right? A simple thing of practice that on where are you going to go for lunch as a problem, and practice going through those steps. That way, when it becomes an actual hairball, crazy, complex problem, right, you go back into your system, and practice makes perfect. And like before, lessons learned and not implemented are just lessons observed. Let's do that as well with our complex problem and our complex problem solving practices. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And please visit Titan HST for all your communications needs, because we're here to help solve some of those complex problems of communication and alerting your organization. Until next time, please stay safe and stay hydrated.
Audio Jungle.
Today with Amazon Business, Shannon Stuckey of Walburn Woodworking helped her team buy 63 circular saws.
Okay, Andy, take it easy.
Now she uses her time to focus on growing something big. Buy smarter, dream bigger. Visit Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Januszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
I'm doing fantastic. And it's hard to believe it's August already and we're heading into the end of summer.
Yeah, fortunately for me, I'm heading to the beach this weekend for a week. So that's a good place to be heading in August. So.
Yes, it is.
But
And
so
of course, you know, the dog days of summer as things heat up. It's a great time to sort of take it easy, scale back, and think about what you're doing automatically and what habits you've got going. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How you can build positive habits and break negative ones.
yeah, now is a really good time to start planning that because a lot of people are, they're in coast mode during the summer, having a good time or whatever. But September is only a month away now, and that's kind of like back to school, back to business, and that kind of thing. So I think timing wise, this is a perfect thing to talk about.
Yeah, and it's so important because so much of what we do by habit, both good and bad. And there's a fantastic book that I read earlier this year called Atomic Habits. And one of the things that they talk about is building habits on top of existing habits. And it makes it that much easier to add good habits into your life. And something that they talk about with building habits is, if you've got yourself a morning routine, and we've talked a lot about morning routines, use that to build on a new habit. So let's say, for example, you've got a morning routine, you get up, you drink a glass of water, you stretch. Well, that's a great place to add a little exercise if you're not already doing it. And one of the other things they talk about is the 2-minute rule. Habits take time to build. So don't just jump in. Take 2 minutes. If you can do something for 2 minutes one day, that's the start of a habit. And then just build on it. Don't, push yourself to go, oh, I've got to work out for 2 hours every day. I've got to read for an hour and a half every day. It's like when you put that kind of pressure on yourself, you're almost asking for the habit to fall apart.
Yeah, one of the best things you can do is start small, chunk things down. It's really, really important to do that. I know you've heard me talk about Lao Tzu, the philosopher from way, way, way back when, whose 3 things to learn in life is number 1 is simplicity. In other words, don't try and do everything at once, one thing at a time. Patience, be patient with yourself as things are going on. You know that you're going to mess up from time to time, but just understand that. And then the compassion side of things. Take it easy on yourself. Don't take it so hard. Don't go looking in the mirror and looking at all the negatives all the time. Obviously, if you want to develop good habits, as you said, what you need to do is you need to start with the good ones that you already have, because routine-wise, it's the same thing. So you talked about doing a morning routine and expanding it from a little bit to a little bit more. And that's a great way to do it. And the bottom line is when you're trying to start a new habit, look at the steps that you're doing, just step by step. And what's really, really important, I have these tips as I always get to prepare for this, but the last one is reward yourself for making progress at set time intervals. So pat yourself on the back if you've done it for a couple of days. I mean, obviously, it's general knowledge or supposed theory that it takes 21 days to build a new habit. But some are going to take longer, some might take shorter. But it's really, really important to just celebrate what you're doing instead of thinking about, I didn't do.
And that's so true. so many of us go, oh, I didn't do it today. Well, and then there's actually a parody satire website called the Babylon Bee, and they post fake headlines all the time. And the other day they posted a headline, man on diet has cheat day for 23 days. And we've all done that. And it's like, yeah, avoiding the diet turns into the habit. Well, no, just take it one day at a time. It's like, you can't go, oh, well, I didn't do it yesterday, so what's the point of doing it today? That way you'll never get started. You have to do it step by step, taking it easy, small steps. And yes, as you said, reward yourself along the way.
Yep, and understand you're going to mess up from time to time. So these 7 steps that I have for breaking a bad habit. Step number 1 is to set a goal, what habit you want to break. Number 2, this is really important. Decide on a replacement behavior. If you're going to get rid of a habit, find another one that you're going to do. Number 3, and this one's huge.
Well, hang on before you go on to number 3. Number 2 is big, because stopping a bad habit without replacing it, you end up focusing on the bad habit rather than the replacement. And the more you focus on the bad habit, the harder it is to break. And the perfect example is when somebody's trying to quit smoking. Most of the time, they're told to replace it with something, chew a piece of gum, nicotine patch for, in medical situations to replace the nicotine. There's always a replacement habit. And that is so important, because when you have a positive habit that you're replacing a negative habit with, that becomes your focus, and you think more about doing the replacement than doing the bad habit. And that helps break it that much, easier, but it also helps you build that replacement habit correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first step is to set the goal, and that's also step 1 in building a new habit. And basically, it's what you are defined to do that turns your negative into a positive. It's replacing that with something new. Number 3, really, really important. When you have a bad habit, there are some things that trigger you for that. Okay, it could be watching TV, it could be this and that, whatever. What is the reason for your bad habit, or what gets you into it on a day-to-day basis? If you can sit down and do a little bit of a self-analysis to identify, where the behavior happens, what time of day, how you feel when it happens, are there other people involved, and so on and so forth. Those are ways to identify things that you can replace with something new to help quell the habit continuing on. So
absolutely. And those triggers are just as important when creating a new habit. And as we said, if you're trying to replace a habit, you can use that same trigger. For example, if you sit down to watch something on TV, and it triggers you to unconsciously start snacking. Well, move the snack somewhere else, so that when you go to that place, they're not automatically there. But try to use that trigger. Put a set of dumbbells next to the TV, so that instead of reaching for a snack, you're getting some exercise. And that's just an example, but use those triggers. They're very important.
Yeah, I mean, if you're staying up too late at night and only sleeping a few hours at night, why are you staying up till midnight every night? You might see that you're watching TV until midnight every night. One of the recommendations here is, why not try turning off the TV and your phone at 9 o'clock every night and see what happens when you do that. That automatically is going to make you do something else, or want to go to bed early, or do something to replace it, like read something that will relax you and make you more tired to go to bed. So, I mean, these are different things that you can, once you find out why you're doing it or when you're doing it, you can think of things to replace that.
Absolutely. So. And, if you need a little extra help to break things, there are tools and gadgets that you can use. For example, if you're staying up till midnight watching TV, you can actually, some smart TVs have this built in. Otherwise, you can actually buy these plugs that you plug the TV in, you plug that into the wall, and it allows you to set a timer so that at 9 o'clock, whether you're watching or not, the TV goes off. And you can use these things to go, oh, okay, that's it. It's time to, stop watching TV. Let's move on to do something else. Let's read, go to sleep earlier, work, whatever it is that you want to do. Same thing if you're getting caught up at work. You can set timers on your computer to go, okay, it's time to step away from the computer, time to do something else.
Yeah. The next one, it leads perfectly right into this, because the next one says post reminders to yourselves. This could be things stuck on your refrigerator and this or that or whatever. But what you are talking about is implement reminders to stop yourself.
Yes.
As far as the television and this and that, whatever. But if you have your reminders, the bottom line is if you get up first thing in the morning and you're not used to grabbing a glass of water and stretching and doing this and that, whatever, it's going to take a while for you to do that. Again, 21 days practicing the same thing, and you probably have a good habit going on. But if you forget and you have a reminder on your mirror, that's the best place to put it. The first thing you do when you get up in the morning is probably go to the bathroom and look in the mirror and brush your teeth and stuff like that. Have a couple reminders there. Have a couple reminders on the refrigerator as far as snacks and this and that goes. There are a lot of things to help you out because, our brain holds a lot of data, but you can't access it all the way. And priority today might not be priority tomorrow. So the more visual you have, especially when you get to be my age, the better off you're going to be. So,
yeah. And you can place things strategically for those reminders. If you know there's something you need to bring to work, put it in front of the front door so that when you're about to leave, there it is. You mentioned drinking water first thing in the morning. You can take an insulated bottle, fill it up the night before, have it right next to your alarm clock. The alarm clock goes off, you shut the alarm, there's the water. Make it easy on you. Put these things where you're going to see them immediately.
Yeah, you can have your sneakers and your workout outfit right next to the bed. So if you want to take a walk or go downstairs and work out, you got to step over that to not do it.
Right.
So the next one is a really, really good one. Get help and support from someone. Get an accountability partner. Maybe you're both going to try and accomplish something. And obviously you can help each other celebrate things. And it's a whole lot easier to celebrate somebody else than to look in the mirror and celebrate yourself. Some people have a hard time doing that, even though they know that it's coming from their heart rather than from their head. So obviously getting help and support from someone else is a great way to break and start a new habit.
Absolutely. And, not necessarily just help and support. Depending on what your goal is, make it a challenge. Compete with somebody. That gets the juices flowing. I've done that not too long ago. My wife was trying to lose weight. I've already lost a lot of weight. She started doing the same things I was doing. We got involved in the chamber step challenge, which Chip was also involved in. And just the competition got us moving.
Yeah, and you guys came in number 1 and number 2, and Mindy won, not you.
Yes, my wife beat me. Yes.
Which was really, really cool.
And not only did that make her very proud, made me very proud of her. So, the competition, doing it in a team, these are things that help you build those habits. And the fact of the matter is that chamber challenge has been over for a month, and I still find myself automatically doing things to get steps in. Yep. Because after 3 months, it became a habit.
Yep. I mean, I've always liked walking too. And I did the challenge too. I didn't do as well as you did, but I did come in the top 10, which is not bad for 68. But I average well over 20,000 steps a day. And I'm making sure right now, it's really not too hard to average at least 10, It probably takes, if you want to just do a walk, it'll take you an hour, but you're going to be doing all kinds of other stuff. So if you just get that in, it's just a great way to stay healthy. And again, once you start doing it and keep it going, I did the same thing last year. I still did fine, but I found myself not walking every day after it stopped. And this year I've made it a point to make sure that I continue to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I've talked about this book called The Complaint-Free World a lot when I do my presentations. And what the book is all about, it's written by Pastor Will Bone out of Kansas City. And obviously one of the bad habits that we have is complaining. And when I do my presentations, as far as positive mindset development, I talk about tools for developing it, maintaining an attitude of gratitude practice. And then number 3 is the throwouts. And this is one of them. And I always talk about this book because in the book, he says, what would happen if the world stopped complaining? Obviously, it would be great. But he talks about this 4-step challenge, which you can use for any bad habit to turn it into a good habit. And the 4 stages of this is, say you're going to take this 21-day challenge and you're not going to complain for 21 days, because that's what this is all about. It's a 21-day challenge. You have a purple wristband, and every time you complain, you have to switch wrists. And what you have to do is you have to keep that band on the same wrist for 21 days straight, not just 21 days randomly, but 21 days straight. So somebody could walk up to me and say, okay, Chip, I'm going to take the habit and I'm going to kick it. And they put the wristband on, and within 5 minutes, they've complained about somebody or they've gossiped or so on and so forth. And they started switching wrists and they had said, wow, this is unconscious incompetence. All right. Step 2, after switching that a couple times in the first 5 minutes, you are now consciously incompetent. You are conscious of the fact that you may have a bad habit of complaining. And once you do that, then you get a little bit down to business. And the one that I have the most fun talking about, this is where the 21-day challenge comes in, is not complaining for 21 days. That's, if you can do that, you've gone from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence, which means that you now have a good habit going. And it's really, really tough to do that. And I say, this is where you're taking the challenge with people at work or with family, and you sit down for lunch one day and say, how's your morning going? And there's silence. Nobody wants to talk about anything that's going on. And by the way, thoughts don't count, because you could never do it that way. It's just not going to happen. But if you are consciously working on that, to bite your tongue, again, simplicity, patience, that's the patience part. And then the compassion, having compassion on yourself, that's so important. You've gone from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence by doing that. And then once you've done that for 21 days straight, where you haven't complained, you've gone from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence, where you've turned the habit of complaining into the habit of biting your tongue and not complaining. And that's the way it works for all the different habits. So this is, if you put up the reminders as far as the exercise goes, as for this or for that or whatever, this really is a 4-step process to work, for everything. So I highly recommend getting the book. Again, it's called A Complaint-Free World by Will Bone, because if you can conquer that one, you're going to be able to turn a whole lot of bad habits into good habits.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a fantastic technique for really getting rid of bad habits. And you can do it not just with complaining. The technique works with any bad habit. If you find yourself reaching for a snack, obviously you're not going to go 21 days without eating. But if you go 21 days without eating between meals, you can, move the bracelet from one arm to the other and, keep it on for 21 days. Same thing to quit smoking. You can it works for any bad habit. And that's really what we're talking about, is taking control of those habits.
Yeah.
And I love the term unconscious competence.
Yeah.
Yep.
The bottom line is, people, and this is since mankind started walking the earth, you look at all the different things that we read about, they're all over social media and so on and so forth. And that's because people always have been out of control, letting the outside world control them. And these days, where it's just so easy to do so, joining the crowd and just chiming right in with all negativity. And there's not enough of that stuff going on for positivity out there. And it would be great if there was just a Facebook or this or that, whatever, where only positive stuff was allowed. Because the bottom line is, and you folks out there know this, if you run into somebody who's doing something positive or talking something positive, that is more contagious than any negative virus out there. And you can really, really get the room going with good vibes in a hurry just by being positive, which basically, if you're positive as a habit, which you can turn that into that positive mindset, that's how it works. But if you just analyze things for what they really, really are, you can put this to work in amazing ways. You're not going to change the world, but you could change every single moment, a reaction or interaction that you have with people. And when you walk in the room and you have that reputation for lighting up the room when walking in rather than when you walk out, that is going to change things a whole lot. And that, it makes a whole bunch of difference. And the easiest way, if you want to start a great habit, wake up every morning and the first thing, just go to the mirror and smile at yourself, because the coolest person in the world is smiling back. And make a habit of smiling all the time in all your interactions every day. We just talked about the walking challenge. Every time I'm walking down the street or anywhere, I don't care who's in the car. I can't even see them behind the windshield anyway, but I'm always waving to them. Whether they're waving back or not, sometimes I can't see. It really doesn't matter, because for that moment, they're not thinking negativity. They're thinking about that guy's waving at me. And that's the way that it works.
Absolutely. When you're replacing bad habits with good habits, you're spreading positivity. And there are a lot of benefits to this other than just getting rid of a bad habit. Because when you get rid of these bad habits, your whole well-being improves, your health, your success, your outlook. There's an old saying, some people have stress and some people give stress. You don't want to be somebody who's giving stress. And when you spread that positivity, breaking those bad habits, replacing them with good ones, it starts happening automatically.
Yeah. And that's what it is too. I mean, a habit is not talking. A habit is just being. And that's being who you are and what you are. It has nothing to do with preaching, because if you start doing that, actually preaching is a bad habit. Period.
Absolutely. You're not here to convert people by your words. You want them to see how you're doing by example. Doesn't matter if anybody else picks up on it. You know what you're doing. It's going to make you feel good. That's going to make you more positive, and that's going to attract more positivity. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, it's all about influence. And influence is the most important thing. And Albert Schweitzer said in influence, your example is not the only thing, not the best thing, the most important thing, but it is the only thing. It's leading by example. So I kind of jarbled that, but yeah. In influence, example is not the main thing. It is the only thing. Look that up, post that, and that's what it's all about.
Right. And as we've said, you're not expected to be able to change a habit overnight. The example with the wristband, it takes 21 days to replace a habit. Give yourself the time. Don't put the pressure on yourself. Take it little by little. We've talked about creating processes. And what a habit really is an unconscious process. You're creating the process at the beginning of what you want to do. It becomes a habit when you no longer have to think about it. And that's what good habits do. They keep you doing good processes without even think about it. It's automatic. Bad habits work the same way, but those bring you down. So if you can replace those with good habits, you're going to benefit.
Yep. So go out there and set those goals, those things that you want to change, and come up with a plan to do that and just work on it. So it's easier said than done, but that's the recipe.
It is easier said than done. And that's something also you need to remember. You need to have a goal for this. you're not simply breaking a bad habit for the sake of breaking a bad habit. That's not going to motivate you to do it. You have to have that goal, that reason. Again, I always use weight loss as an example because it's something everybody understands and can identify with. But why are you losing weight? Well, you're not losing weight just for the sake of losing weight. You want to be healthier. You want to, you don't want to die so soon. You want to have the strength to walk up a, flight of stairs. You want to be able to see your daughter's wedding. It's things like that. You have to see what that goal is, why you're doing it. There has to be something that motivates you. So find that motivation. And in many cases, I'll be honest with you, fear is a very good motivator. I lost almost 70 pounds. Now, I didn't expect to be able to lose that much weight. Didn't start out trying to lose that much weight. I was looking for 10 to 15. But the reason I started was because my doctor told me that there was a possibility I was pre-diabetic, and if I didn't start taking better care of myself, I would develop diabetes. Now, just the thought of having to give myself a shot every day went, nope, there's got to be an easier way. Let's start by losing the weight. It's.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, basically like everything else, when we talk about personal development, you got to find your purpose, passion, and your why. So
Yes.
you got to find that why for developing the new habit.
That's it. And that why is so important. And it has to be something that speaks to you. What somebody else's why is might not be motivating for you. You have to figure out what motivates you and use that to say, okay, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to accomplish. What am I doing that's holding me back? And then those are the habits you need to break. And if that goal is strong enough, if that motivation is strong enough, it makes changing the habit that much easier. So we are just about at the end of our time. So Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for this week?
Well, a lot of times we talk about, a lot of times what this podcast is just all about is making you aware of different things out there. Awareness starts with the awareness of the habit that you have that you want to change, but you also have to be aware that at any point in time, you can start on the road to changing it. Now, those are the tools that we gave you today. Again, the first step is defining your goal, taking a look at your triggers as far as why this thing is happening, set up a plan for what you're going to do, have those reminders all over the place, and most importantly, just do something every single day to make it happen and celebrate that one thing that you're doing. One more day of not doing the bad habit, and so on and so forth, instead of trying to conquer 25 things at once and getting down on yourself for not doing so. So one step at a time and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. It is so important that you not get down on yourself. These things take time. And yes, it is easier to break a habit or create a new habit when you've got help, when you've got tools. So, Chip, remind our listeners about the book you mentioned.
Again, it's called A Complaint-Free World by Will Bowen. I think if you go to acomplaintfreeworld.org, that's where it is, where you can order the book, and you can order those bracelets if you want to take the challenge with other people there. Again, I read this a long time ago, so I hope it's still there.
And I had mentioned the book Atomic Habits, and the full title of that is Atomic Habits, An Easy and Proven Way to Build Good Habits and Break Bad Ones. It's written by James Clear, and it is a #1 Amazon bestseller, so it's easy to find. I recommend it's on Audible if you prefer to listen to books. So I absolutely recommend getting this book, using its techniques to help you build those good habits and break the bad ones. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.
When you need milk for Zoe and a cold brew for yourself, Kroger Delivery will get you just what you need in as little as 30 minutes. Open the Kroger app and start your cart, whatever the cart. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Delivery times not guaranteed. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.
When you're a Boost member, you get free delivery, double fuel points, and lots more. Sign up at Kroger.com/boost.
Welcome to the Influential CEO Podcast, where we talk about all things high performance inner work and mindset, because we must be able to lead ourselves in order to lead a revolution and experience the freedom we desire. Welcome to another episode of the Influential CEO Podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Rasky. So first, we're going to start opening today's interview with our Influential Insider Moment. Before I even introduce today's guest, I would love for you to share in the comments what your most favorite recent episode has been, because we've been putting out so many phenomenal episodes with so many amazing guests, and I'd love to know which ones have resonated with you recently. So of course, be sure to like, review, and subscribe on your favorite platform, and be sure to download the Influential app on your favorite device. So joining me today, as we sort of pre-chatted about, I was like, I think I should call you the Cookie Baron at this point, with all the amazing things that he's doing in the world. But there's so much more than just cookies in the world of Bennett Maxwell. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Stacey.
You're welcome. So before we get into all the good stuff, I would love for you to share what the influential leadership, or the concept of influential leadership, what that means to you.
Influential. I love the word, by the way. But it's a challenge for me. So I mean, the flow with the influential. I've always had. I did sales, and then you go from sales to being a sales manager, and then I quickly realized I was not good at managing, and it was a different skill. Since then, I've also realized that managing and leadership is different, because I still consider myself a pretty poor manager, but I think I've definitely been upping my leadership game. So the influential, what I've done in my company is really been able to step out of that day-to-day role, because I realizing that I'm not good at it, and then replacing myself with somebody who is. And in my case, it's Jill, and I hired her as CEO in December. The month we started franchising, I brought on a CEO who's took her own brand from 0 to like 700, just under 700 locations, and ran it for over 3 decades. So I guess to me, it's being influential, but recognizing what you're good at and what you're not, and stepping out of the way to allow other people who are better at, in this case, doing a franchise and cookie company, and really letting them lead, and me chatting with them on the back end process.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. That's so smart. And that really is, right? Understanding like, hey, the best way that I can lead is by bringing in the people who do what we don't, and empowering them, and appropriately delegating, and then really being influential is saying, hey, how can I support you to do your magic and genius to support this vision we're all working towards? So super amazing. So good. So I would love, before we get into talking more about cookies and solar and all kinds of stuff, I would love for you to share about first, just who you are, what you do, all the kind of magic you're bringing into the world and who you serve. And then, of course, we get into the backstory.
Okay. So I run a cookie franchise. It's fairly new. We started franchising in December of last year. So we're 7 months into it, 8 months into it. And we're at 90 stores that we are opening soon. So the first one just opened. We have another 4 over the next few weeks. My background before that was sales, door to door and pest control and satellite and alarms and security and things like that. I'm from Utah, grew up here, have an amazing wife and 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1 that are in Mexico right now without me. I dropped them off at the airport yesterday, but they are a lot of what I'm doing with Dirty Dough is based on really my 2 daughters and the mental health challenges that statistically they are going to face. So anyways, I'm a very big believer in adding value as much as value as you can, building a company without worrying so much about, how much money I'm taking home today, but instead making a difference in the world and focusing on enterprise value. So that way you can have, a larger impact, and then you get paid when you sell if you do it correctly, if you build a very good company that adds a lot of value to a lot of people.
I love that. I love that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head on so many things, because it's really about impact and passion and purpose. When our drivers are coming from this, soulful, purpose-driven place, it's so much easier for us to become successful because we have this calling that's so much bigger than just ourselves, which makes it way easier to work through all the BS and the sabotage and the stories that tend to come up and get in the way along the way, speaking of mental health. And I absolutely loved my time in Utah. I used to live in Utah myself, and I absolutely loved it. I worked in Orem. I lived in West Valley, and just the entire, and my mom was actually down in Hurricane. So all over the state.
Yeah.
So I loved it out there. So much to do. So let's talk about the backstory. What inspired all of this? Because you started to allude to, right, your kids and mental health and, kind of what has been the fuel for all of this success and impact.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give the backstory of Dirty Dough and then why I tied it into the nonprofit and the mental health push. So just over 3 years ago, I was looking at buying a franchise, and I was doing summer sales, which is big here in Utah. So you go out and you knock doors and you sell for 4 to 5 months, and I'd make multiple 6 figures in the 4 to 5 months. And I wanted to buy a franchise, a cookie franchise, to add on to that income. But the cookie franchise that I was looking at was Crumble Cookies, which is an amazing franchise, but they were already sold out in the state of Utah, and they require you to be owner operated, meaning I would have to move out of the state of Utah and give up my other career to run a cookie business full time, which just didn't align with my investment strategy. I didn't want to give up my other income. I was looking to add to it. So, but it got me interested in cookies, and it got me interested in the potential there. And it was fun. I like cookies. My kids like cookies. So what we did was, anyways, it got me interested. Then I went and did solar in 2019 for the first time. Loved that. Ended up teaming up with my brother, and we started a solar company a few months later. So that was January of 2020. And somebody else from Orem, speaking of Orem, so that's where I grew up. I went to Mountain View High School, and somebody that I went to high school with posted and said, I have a cookie business. I do delivery only, and I'm looking for an investor to open up a retail storefront. So I gave him some money. He opened up the retail storefront, and then I wanted him to franchise it to me, living in San Diego. And instead of franchising, he said, you know what? I'm actually thinking about selling the company. And I'm like, I've never even worked in food before, but I just listened to a podcast that was talking about to create, go from being rich to wealthy, creating generational wealth. It's real estate, which I already had maybe a handful of properties at the time, and businesses, investing in real estate and businesses. I was like, I have a solar business, but I've never bought a business. let's give it a go. So, and then I also kind of had in the mind, if I'm able to buy this business as a business, I'm running solar company in San Diego. This is a food company out of Tempe, Arizona, because that's where it was started. If I can make this work, then there's a lot of other people like me that are capable of, and looking for something similar. So I just have to make it really simple, really dummy proof or Bennett proof, because I didn't know what I was doing in that. But that's what got me into cookies. Kind of fell into my lap, and I'm like, I was already willing to franchise a cookie company. I'm just going to buy it and create the best, most simplistic and scalable food franchise model. And anyways, so that's what I've been working on. And to answer the second question with the mental health, about that same time, maybe 3 years ago, I listened to a podcast and Jonathan Haidt talking about the correlation between self-harm and social media. And at the time, I had a 2-year-old daughter and a newborn daughter. And statistically speaking, they're twice as likely to go to the hospital because of self-harm than they were 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, crap. Like, okay, then what? Right? What do you do? Right? There was no solution to it. It was just, here's the problem. And then it's like, man, that got me thinking about it. And then here in Utah, I had a cousin, 12 years old, suicide attempt in 6th grade, elementary school. Same thing, huge scare. Like, wow, how do you prevent that? How do you help people do that? Prevent that. And I heard an employee say, dirty dough means the dough is dirty. We focus on the inside of the cookie. And I'm like, that's really cool. So we started running with that. And we wanted to differentiate ourselves from the other cookie companies that focus on top of the cookie and making the cookie look perfect and pretty and put all this frosting on it, where it's a dirty cookie, and we do more mix-ins and more fillings and multi-layer cookies, because we know that the inside matters most. Life is imperfect and messy, but it's meant to be enjoyed, just like these cookies are imperfect and messy. So it was fighting against that stigma of, I live a normal life, but I see Stacy's perfect Instagram life, and then I feel bad about myself. It's like, no, that's not, life is dirty, and that's fine. It's totally fine that it's not perfect and it's messy. You can still enjoy it. So that's kind of what got me interested in that. And I'm like, okay, I think I can make a difference here with this brand, with this messaging. And we can get into a little bit more on what exactly we're doing a little bit later, because I've been talking for too long now.
No, it's amazing. I absolutely love that. And that's so true, right? The difference between making things look perfect on the outside or being in that energy of like, it doesn't have to be perfect on the outside. And what matters so much is what we're bringing internally. That is huge and so powerful. So powerful. And it's interesting that you bring up the self-harm piece, because, in all of the work that I do in optimizing leaders, in being more in flow, influential, all of the things, being able to lead, delegate, take back their time, take control of themselves, right? It is all of this self-mastery and self-leadership. And it's interesting to see all of the generations and upon generations of unhealthy coping. And now with social media and things like that, everything's amplified. So seeing the difference too, but when we have unhealthy coping, and a lot of that comes with boundaries and esteem, two things I had none of growing up, and seeing how the predominantly males tend to express that outwardly, even though I know men who and boys who have self-harmed, but it's more of a self-destructive as opposed to self-harm, like reckless behavior and things like that. Where for myself and a lot of the women, or predominantly with women, will tend to go inward with it, hence the internal self-destruction of, so it was a lot of binge eating, binge drinking, those types of self-harm, all the way to physical self-harm and other types of self-punishment. And it's really interesting, the subtleties, especially around high achievers, high performers, that there's so many socially acceptable ways in which we actually self-punish and self-harm, and people don't even realize. And so, it's a lot of what I talk about around being high functioning as opposed to actually being a high performer. Our unhealthy coping with all of this old wounds and trauma ends up expressing in a way that creates a positive ROI, because we funnel that into control issues and hustle and workaholism and things like that. So we're actually creating a lot of success in the world externally. So we look amazing. But then we see so many of these, especially like obviously famous people, Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade and Chris Cornell, who again, right, it looks perfect. And then obviously we get to the place where they end up committing suicide.
Yeah. There's being in a sales background and taking on professional sales. It's all about diving in and to a concern, right? It's like, well, it costs too much. Well, what costs too much? Is it the upfront payment or the monthly payments, or like, what do but like really diving into the true issue there. And I don't think we typically do that in our own lives, right? It's like, well, I'm going to sacrifice relationships to work more, because if I work more, I'm going to have more money, and I'm then I want more money to have more free time so I can travel. It's like, well, but why do you want to travel? Well, I want to be with my family. I want to bring them. Well, why do you want to be with your family? Usually comes down to, it's going to make me happy. And it's like, well, I don't know. I visited a few dozen countries, and I've seen people that aren't doing that are happy. So do you need all that? Like, are you going to go down a 40-year path trying to get all these things so you can spend time with your family, so you can travel, so you can be happy? Or can you just be happy by focusing on your mental health, your mindset, your attitude, and all that? So that's really what I'm pushing for, because I've been going through that myself over the last year. I sold my solar company last year, and I felt great. And I'm usually a happy, positive person, but I was even happier at that time. But 2 weeks later, I'm working on a Saturday, and I'm like, I could be at the beach with my family. What am I doing? So I started self-reflecting, and anyways, and then that helped a ton with what I'm trying to do with Dirty Dough. And it's not about making more money, because I've made some money, but it's, how am I going to be happy, and how am I going to feel fulfilled? And that's giving back and making a positive impact.
Absolutely. Every single time. I mean, literally, it was one thing that we realized over time. Just all of the people even in my ecosystem, in my influential leadership mastermind, all my clients, all my team, everybody, nobody's money driven. Like, that's great. Obviously, we want to earn more money, but that's not the driver. And so I've noticed there's this huge difference in the quality of the people. Not that there's anything wrong with being money driven. There's like no judgment there whatsoever. I notice a different type of fire burning for the people who it's about the impact. It's about the freedom. It's about the fulfillment, where the ROI is, am I really living my life to the fullest, and also creating that legacy of impact along the way?
Yeah,
and it's go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I would argue that the money-driven people are after the same thing. They just think that money is going to get them there, but we're all after that same thing. And so, like, how I define it, it's joy and fulfillment. Like, that's my mission statement, is to find joy and fulfillment in myself and help as many other people as possible do the same. So like that's what I'm after. It has nothing to do with money. Now, can money amplify that and spread the cause? Yeah, that's why I'm in cookies, because cookies are profitable. It's going to allow us to have a bigger impact, and it's fun, right? But that's not why we're doing it. I think the people who are still money focused, it's because they haven't asked well, why do I want money? Well, why do I want that? Well, why do I want what money's going to give me? It gives, and they don't go through the full circle. And they're like, wait a second, I could just have that now. I can make an impact now, right? I don't need to wait and sacrifice relationships to have all that.
Exactly. Well, and what it is it's just flipping the be, do, have model of success from the old paradigm where most of us are programmed that we've got to have the money to do the things to be happy.
Exactly that.
Yeah. And so they're functioning from that way of living. And when we flip the script around to, okay, I am going to be the person and leader I'm called to be, which allows me to know what I need to do to have the impact, the money, and the fulfillment I desire. And it's like, oh, be it, then do it, then have it. And everything completely shifts. And it really is the biggest piece I've noticed, though, is how many people actually block themselves from receiving that joy and fulfillment.
And I mean, for me, I didn't know why I was doing it. I'm telling myself one thing and I'm doing something different. So after I sold my company, I started seeing a therapist. I still see a therapist. And I'm like a huge believer that everybody should see a therapist, where typically it's like, well, if I have a mental illness, I'm going to go see a therapist. It's like, well, no, if life isn't perfect, which it's not for anybody, then you should go figure out your thoughts and your own psyche and why you do one thing when you say you believe in something else, and like figure out your mind, right? Because what determines your happiness and fulfillment and joy and drive? Well, it's your mindset or your mental health, right? So let's focus on that. So I've been doing that for the last year, and I sought help rather than trying to figure it out all myself.
And that is the wisest thing you can do, because when we're down in it, we don't have the perspective that we need to figure it all out on our own. And that's why therapists and coaches and mentors are so vital in completely elevating and shifting our mindset to match not only who we're called to be, but what we want to do and create in the world. Yeah. And that is so awesome, right? I have gone back to therapy myself after my move. It was like, oh wait, time to get back into the therapist. So I've got like a bazillion coaches and mentors, and I still go to therapy because it's like, they're all different. They work well together. And that's exactly it. We've got to understand how we function, because at the end of the day, joy, freedom, and fulfillment is 1000% internal. It doesn't matter what conditions are happening externally, but if you're in that way of a living and leading, then that's what we have.
And it's hard because, like, for me, I was like, a therapist. I would never see a therapist, you know. Like I grew up thinking anxiety, depression, even headaches. Not, kid you not, like if you had a headache, it's because you had a weak mind. Like that's what I grew up, just completely ignorant, right? But especially as a man, it's like nobody wants to admit that they see a therapist, and it's like, but why? Like I said that on a podcast that I was on recently. He's like, I've never had somebody admit that they see a therapist on a podcast. I was like, well, that's probably a big issue then. Like, why are people ashamed of that, to say that they want to live a more fulfilled life, you know, and want to understand themselves? Like you said, I have a business coach. When I go to the gym, I have a trainer. But why wasn't I working on my mental health? Because what's more important, you know, my mentality and my mindset versus my business versus my physical health? Well, they're all very important, but if I want to be happy, it's the mentality and the mental health that is most important, at least in my opinion. But yeah, there's such a big stigma, and it's like, oh, and this, and you know, I don't want to go, and how do you find one? And I went through all of that, and then how do you pay for one? And it's like, I pay $10. It's like $100 and something bucks. My insurance pays for it. I pay $10 a time. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. So anyways, it's been great.
I love it. That is awesome. And it is, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. Why not get to know ourselves better? Because it is 80% of our success is completely internal. We're not going to be consistent in showing up to take care of our bodies, you know, if we don't have our mindset and our relationship with ourselves in a good place. And we're definitely not going to show up to lead our businesses in the way that they're called or need us to be as the leader or delegator, or, you know, whatever capacity of leadership that that we're bringing to the table to navigate communicating with team members and managing our time and our energy and all of the resources that we need to be in control of, especially our emotions, because otherwise we're just constantly reacting and putting out fires, and that's just not gonna help. So all right, we are going to take a quick break, and be sure to come back as we continue this powerful conversation. See you in a minute.
Go deeper by grabbing your copy of my best-selling book, Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch, by going to firethatbitchbook.com.
Welcome back to this powerful mental health and success conversation with the amazing cookie baron of Dirty Dough, Bennett Maxwell. I love how transparent you are about that. The fact that the conversations around mental health and self-care in that way are becoming more and more common, that it's okay, it's removing the stigma, right? Because there was a lot of judgment and shame around asking for help.
Yep. Yeah, it's like we're expected to have it all figured out already. And it's especially, I think it's it affects everybody, but as a man, I think it's a little bit more like man up, right? Like that's what I learned when I was a kid. Like, man up, like you don't need help, you just need to figure it out, or you're not a man. So, which is so stupid. Like that's just so dumb. Like, what do you mean man up? Like, why can't you get help? Everybody helps each other and everything. Like, anyways, so it's definitely a challenge. And in general, it's just mental health is typically reactive. You start seeing a therapist if you have anxiety or depression or a mental illness, when it's like, well, why not be proactive about it? How come nobody's doing that? If mental health is key to happiness, why are we waiting till we have an issue to seek help? So that's really what I'm trying to change is just like we go to the gym every week or multiple times a week, we need to be working on our mental health, whether that's a therapist and or meditation or learning about happiness mindset and breathing exercise. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do to figure that out that we just don't do.
It is interesting. I see that all the time. It's how resistant people are to doing the inner work, to looking inside to solve whatever the problem is that they're experiencing. As somebody who specializes in that high performance inner work, or the mental unfuckery of, generations of social and family programming, refining those skills. It is interesting to see the dichotomy, because there's some who are like, they get it. They're like, okay, every time I hit that roadblock, I recognize I'm playing out cycles and patterns. It's time to go back to doing that inner work, not just chasing the strategies, the external strategies, in their business or for their teams or things like that, because that's just patching the symptoms. That's the Band-Aid. But it's always every single one of those external challenges is a mirror reflection of something going on internally. And so, I'm always about go to the root. Quit patching symptoms and having the same problems and going through the same cycles over and over and over again. Go right to the root, heal, process, release, address, whatever it is, shift, elevate skill sets and strategies for self-mastery, mindset mastery, self-leadership. And then there's this powerful cascade that happens of, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, all of your relationships are better. Your business is better. Your all the problems you have with your team, for the most part, are ironing themselves out because we're communicating better. We're more emotionally available for the things that we desire.
Yep.
It's amazing. And I see so many of these leaders, and they're in massive struggle busts too, like completely maxed out on time and energy. They're burning the candle at both ends. juggling all the things, not fulfilled, not satisfied, working for quote unquote freedom, and yet they're a prisoner to their business and or life. And that's not a pain point enough still for them to say, oh, I can do something different.
And I see that a lot. And anyways, there's a book called The E-Myth, and that was a life-changing book for me. And because it tells you a harsh truth, or at least what I consider a truth. And same with the book. If you own a business that requires you to be there every day for it to make money and run, then you're not a business owner, you own your own job. And it's not a great job. It's a shitty job because you work the longest hours and you get paid last. So, but most of us business owners, like, it's so hard to let go of control because we could do it better ourselves. But kind of going back to the start of the podcast, allowing ourselves to step aside, and maybe somebody does it 50% as good as you, but at least you can double your time now or triple your time. Or you can hire somebody. If you hire the right people, you can hire people that are more effective than you, which I've definitely been lucky enough to do. So I definitely see that with people getting trapped in their own jobs because they don't want to expand. So if anybody's there, which I think is most people, read that book. That's what allowed me to do my, I started my solar company, tried out solar for a few months, liked it, started a company, and then 18 months later was able to sell it because I did the E-Myth strategy. And you can even watch a YouTube video, 10 minutes, get the gist of it and start implementing that. And I've been doing the same thing with Dirty Dough, and it's also helped a ton. We just raised money at a 50x valuation of when I bought the company the previous year. So it was like probably 18 months, maybe 15, 16 months from the time I bought the company to the time I raised the money, with the valuation 50x, because I stepped out and I put people in place to be able to expand the business. So anyways, anybody out there that hasn't heard that book, and it's stuck, go read the book and apply it, because it's life-changing for sure.
And you hit the nail on the head, right? It comes down to control. It is the unhealthy coping that we've learned through our lives to create the safety we're lacking because we don't have boundaries. So I always talk about this. I teach this all the time, that the biggest wall we have is our control issues. And that is the biggest limiter to our success. And that's it right there, right? Being able to let go of control, have healthy boundaries, which means responsibility, expectations, accountability for your team, for your people, and being able to effectively delegate and let go of control, because we are the ones that get in the way when everything comes back to us. We're not going to be able to scale. And that's what it means to be influential, that you step back and let go. Like, it's focus, it's flow, and it's letting go.
No, that's definitely the key. But who's here to teach us that until we have to figure it out ourselves or read a book, right? That's the hard part. It's like, oh crap, I should have been doing that forever ago.
It's literally how I became specialized in teaching that exact stuff, was because I did not have that skill set myself. I had to start finding those coaches and mentors to teach me, because I have my rock bottom moment. I'm like, oh, wait. Oh, okay. I hate myself because I'm trying to control everything but me. Yeah. So it was literally hiring mentors and coaches to start figuring out how to build a relationship with myself, to stop trying to control anything externally, start taking control of me, mastering my time, energy, and emotions, building those boundaries. And it's like, oh, look at how things change. Lose half my body weight, be able to save my marriage, create a successful business empire, right? Like, grow the team, all the things, and do it in that place of freedom, fun, fulfillment.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. So good. Now, with all of the stuff that you've been doing, now you also have a nonprofit. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we're still creating it. So the nonprofit is kind of going back to the mental health. Like, how can we actually put our money where our mouth is, right? So the messaging with Dirty Dough is the inside matters most, right? Life is imperfect and it's messy. It's meant to be enjoyed. So like our company mission statement is my personal mission statement with 2 more words in there, but it's to find joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness in ourselves and others, right? So throwing in the dirty in there, but we don't need to seek that perfection. So how do we, other than just giving a positive message, how else can we affect people? Well, we need to teach them and educate them. And who? Well, we need to start at kids. So the goal of the nonprofit and what we'll be doing is calling schools and saying, hey, do you guys have you ever heard of a wellness center? And most of them have, because they're popping up all over the country. And what you're doing is you're converting an old classroom into something brand new that doesn't feel like school anymore, but it's all focused on the proactivity of mental health. So, hey, if you have the classroom, we'll fund it and we'll provide the program. You just need to have the classroom. And then we call Stacy and say, hey, the middle school that you went to, they have a classroom and they're willing to convert it to a wellness room. As corporate, we're going to put up a few grand. We want you to put up a few grand. Then they're going to drive traffic to your store. And we're going to do a fundraising night. And then we're going to send out an email blast to all the parents, let them know what we're doing with an Amazon wish list. And then they can go buy the paintings or the couch or the diffuser, whatever's in this wellness room to get people involved. But we have 4 methods of raising the money. And these are like $10,000, $15,000. So they're not that expensive, especially when you're raising money with the 4 people. And then we have a wellness center now that kids can come in, take a break, and learn about coping mechanisms and learning how to let go of the past. They could grab a tablet and see what it's like to live in the moment and be present, and guided meditation and happiness mindset and breathing exercises and changing your physiological state. So we want to build these in K through 12 schools with the goal of building at least 1 wellness center per franchise that we open. So right now, if we've done 90 in 8 months, I think we can get to 1,000. I mean, that's the goal, 1,000 of these and at least 1,000 wellness centers, so we can make a really big impact and teach kids of all ages on how to be proactive with the mental health.
I absolutely love that. And actually, when we wrap up, I am going to make sure that I connect you with someone who's on the mental health board for the state of Utah. And
awesome.
Somebody who also has a nonprofit that focuses on supporting youth in Utah.
I would love that. Yeah.
He was a guest. Sean Vieira was a guest actually on my show recently. And that's what he's doing. So I think you two definitely will make some magic and impact in the world, collaborating in that same purpose and passion. So I think it'll
for sure. No, I'd appreciate that. The whole model of Dirty Dough, or of anything that I do, is just about connecting with the right people for sure, and putting our minds together and seeing what's out there. Because we've developed what I consider the most simple and scalable food franchise model that exists out of any food franchise. And that was, did I develop it? Yes and no, kind of, right? It was really just, I told 100 people my idea, and every time my idea got a little bit better because they gave me valuable feedback. And then I went and cross-checked it with somebody else who either validated it or challenged it. And I kept doing that till only the good ideas stuck. Then we implemented it, and it's been going really well. So mental health side and the nonprofit, I know it's going to be the same. It's just getting connected with the right people who know more than myself.
I love that. Well, I think the perfect summation of our entire conversation today really is success is not a solo sport. From being willing to be proactive and get help, through therapy, investing in coaches and mentors, and just putting our things out there to get that feedback from other people, right? That you were open to that, the positive and the constructive, and allowing it to be this malleable thing that really was collaborative, with so many people being a part of it, and that none of us are here alone.
Yeah.
Ever. It's always about being willing to ask for help, and more importantly, being open to receive it.
Yep. Yeah. The connections that we build are so key to any success, right? Whether that's success in the family or financial or just your overall happiness level. Definitely the relationships are what it's all about.
Always. So good. So I am certain people are going to want to connect with you and learn more about you and Dirty Dough and all the things that you've got going. So where can they find you online?
My website. So bennettmaxwell.com, BENNETTMAXWELL. So right there, you can follow me on social media. I try to put up good content, try to provide as much value as I possibly can. You can also look into the franchise opportunity, inquire about that, get some more info. So yeah, that's the best spot to connect with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. Any final thought before we wrap up?
No, I love the conversation. I like that we didn't go, and usually it's like, what have you done with Dirty Dough? Have you sold all that? But we went completely off of it, and I liked it because what we talked about is vastly more important than building a very scalable business, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Because no matter what we do outside, we're always with ourselves. So I've gotten that feedback a lot. I get guests on here who are like, oh my gosh, I get to talk about things I never got to talk about elsewhere.
Yes.
And then I hear that from the audience who follows people all the time. And they're like, I just learned something completely new about somebody I've been following for years because we get to talk about other stuff here. So
yeah, so I've really appreciated that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. It's just been an amazing conversation. And for those of you listening, of course, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review if you enjoyed our conversation today. And download that influential app so you always have this podcast and all our other exclusive resources right in your pocket. And remember, as always, you are enough. And I will see you in the next episode.